Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar, Beyond Good Inside, Resilience for Yourself so you can parent well. We are Dovetail Learning and our approach is called We Are Resilient. I'm so happy you can join us today. Before we get any further, I just want to thank you for being you, for handling all the challenges that come up, for taking care of the people around you, and for caring. We know that you make a difference in so many people's lives, and we appreciate it. I'd also like to give you an introduction to myself. My name is Meri McCoy-Thompson. I am the Executive Director of Dovetail Learning and the co-author of the We Are Resilient approach with many other members of our team. I have 2 adult children. My daughter recently got married, so we now have 6 in our family. And we've spent many years living abroad and working in various countries. And my motto really is to help others live their best life. I also take care of my mother who has Alzheimer's, and we have a cat. Our mission here at Dovetail Learning is to strengthen resilience in adults and children, and our vision is a world of kind, connected human beings. All of our materials are open educational resources, which means you can download them and use them for free, adapt them for use in your community, as long as you give attribution and share back things that you've created so that we can share them with others. And be sure to share alike with the same license for any materials that you create using our work. Our agenda today, we're going to be looking at how resilience can help us parent better. First, I'm going to acknowledge Dr. Becky Kennedy's wonderful contribution in her book and her approach, Good Inside. And then we're going to talk about how the We Are Resilient approach can also help in a complementary way. We're going to take a look at what can get in the way of resilience and talk about a few mindsets and centering skills that can help us parent better. Before we get any further, I really want to thank Dr. Becky Kennedy for all of her good work. She wrote the book Good Inside, and she has a wonderful social media following and channel around all the ways to help us parent better and be more attached to our children and understand their needs in a deeper way. The concepts that she's helped reinforce for me is our kids need our help learning how to handle their emotions. They can be really big. They can feel mind-blowing at sometimes, whether they're a baby or a toddler screaming, or whether they're elementary school pushing back or a sullen teenager. All those things can feel negative energy, and maybe we don't want to engage or have the kid do it themselves, but they really need our help. As part of that, our attachment to our children is the most important gift that we can give them, our love and our relationship. And focusing on that is really helpful, especially when things are getting out of control or feel like they're getting out of control. We know that when we rest in that relationship with our children, it's something called co-regulation. Our strength, our calmness helps our children learn that emotions can be managed and helped, and that we can help calm them down. Just like we turn to friends and family when we're all feeling dysregulated and very upset about things, often we have friends or people in our life that help us feel calm, and that's what we can do for our kids. Dr. Becky Kennedy also reinforces how we teach how to handle emotions through our modeling. What we do matters to our kids, and when we're off the handle or having upset, our kids kind of, is that how we handle things when we're angry or sad or other things that can feel really big. She also reinforces that we're all good inside. Even when our kids seem to be acting out, they really need us and they want us, and they're good inside. They just need more help. So I really appreciate all those good things that she has to say. If you have any other things that you'd like to add, and feel free to put them in the chat, and also feel free to ask questions anytime you'd like. I'd love for this to be an interactive seminar. So now that we know we can be good role models, what's next? How do we stay with our kids when they have bad behavior? How do we become those good role models that we want to be? We Are Resilient can really help. Today we're going to look at some of our protective patterns that can get in the way and mindsets and centering skills that we can help. Bottom line is we know that we parent our children better when we feel grounded and whole. But that's an awfully high bar sometimes, and it's a difficult task. Sometimes we just feel like we're not. So today's webinar is about giving us some skills so we can achieve that just a little better. So first, let's take a moment and talk about resilience. What is it? Resilience is simple. It's the ability to adapt and respond to meet challenges effectively. This is a goal we have ourselves, and it's a goal we want for our kids. Really, ultimately, we can't change all the things that are going to happen in our children's life, but we can give them the skills so they can meet those challenges when they come. We need to know our resilience will be higher or lower in different situations. No matter what we do, we're never going to have a totally flat line with always feeling the same level of high resilience. It's going to go up and down. Something's going to come in the door. We might have some natural disaster. We might have just a family crisis, or we may just be feeling low. That's just part of life. And our resilience can be strengthened through the practice of our skills. Intentionally putting into practice the We Are Resilient approach can strengthen our resilience and help us meet those challenges just that much more effectively. Resilience is an ordinary superpower. It does not come from rare and special qualities, but from the everyday magic of being human. Now we know what resilience is. Well, what can get in the way of our resilience? Why do we not feel resilient sometimes? Let's pay attention for a moment to our stress trigger reaction. This is what happens when we're going along. Maybe we're in the grocery store and our toddler pulls some cans aside and then we have things falling on the floor. We have a reaction when something happens, whether it's small like that or big, like some bad health crisis in a family member. Sometimes our protective patterns emerge. We might feel angry, we might feel upset, we might feel embarrassed, we might feel ashamed. They emerge and they can feel really big, and we have a peak, and it can take a long time to calm down, and we feel depleted after. This is our stress trigger reaction, and it's our children's stress trigger reaction. This is a human experience, and we all have it. And it's good to recognize this can happen for us, and it can happen for those we love about. So how do we manage this? How do we keep our cool? Well, when that stress trigger comes in, if we can notice our protective patterns, wonder about them, where do they come from, what is this about, assess, is this helping me, and choose a resilient skill if it's not. Sometimes it is, but if it's not, choose a resilient skill instead so we can calm down. We may not have a completely flat line. Notice it still goes up, but much less. We don't have the big red zone and we don't feel so depleted afterwards. It's really about keeping our cool. So let's talk a little bit about these protective patterns, how we react to the world, those things that put us into the red zone, right? What are they? Well, our protective patterns emerge when we feel unsafe or vulnerable. This could be physically, emotionally, socially, mentally, economically. There are so many things that make us feel a little unsafe or vulnerable, and we may have them many times a day. Our protective patterns can be helpful. That's why they're called protective patterns. They evolve to help keep us safe. Often they are things that we learned as children and maybe from our parents or other people around us about how to behave when things get rocky. And sometimes they don't help us as adults, or maybe not in all situations. So the more we can notice them, the more we can decide, do we want to use that or do we want to use something else? So we've named 6 types of protective patterns that are common for people to have: distrusting, hypervigilance, hyper-caretaking, avoiding, defending, or attacking. All of us have often 1 or 2 go-to protective patterns that we're more likely to use during stress. That is also true for our children. Now, sometimes it's hard to recognize, like if they're a baby and toddler, are they really being distrusting? Are they avoiding? But over time, as they grow, we can start figuring out, oh, that's my child's protective pattern. That's what they do when they're under stress. My style is avoiding and attacking. One of the two tend to come out the most. So if my husband comes in with some question that I don't want to deal with, I don't have time to deal with, sometimes I'll just attack him. What? Leave me alone. Or Even just talking in a harsh voice, even if I'm trying to answer the question, I raise my voice or I talk in a kind of an attacking manner. If I get a text from my family members about an Alzheimer thing, about my mother's business I'm supposed to help with, sometimes I just avoid it. I put down my phone, I pretend it's not there because I just can't deal with it. So those are the kinds of things that I do when I get in feeling vulnerable or maybe unsafe. Now let's look at these protective patterns a little more about how they actually work. So avoiding might be withdrawing or retreating. Sometimes it's toxic positivity, like, oh, it's all going to be okay, when we really know it's not. It's all going to be okay. Let's not talk about anything negative. Sometimes it's a numbing, avoiding emotions. That can be through an addictive behavior, everything from substance misuse, TV zombie, overeating, workaholic. Sometimes we just do other things that we shouldn't be doing because we don't want to deal with what we should be dealing with. Now, avoiding can, like all protective patterns, avoiding can be helpful. Sometimes it just de-escalates the situation. Sometimes walking away and not dealing with it is the best way to actually handle it. It can create a safe space which protects us from harm, and it avoids perpetuating previous trauma. But it can also harm. It shuts down our access to our emotions, our needs. It helps us prevent lasting solutions. It creates loneliness, reduces connection, all those things when we avoid. Let's take a look at another protective pattern, hyper caretaking. So it looks like, how do I over prioritize others to my own detriment? This is common among parents, right? It can help because it helps others in needs. It helps our kids. We're doing a great thing. We feel connected. We're right in their lives. We're doing what they need. It can strengthen our community, our family. We're just doing such a great job of caregiving for everyone. It gives us a feeling of being needed, and that's why a lot of us move into hyper caretaking. But it can really harm. It neglects our own fundamental needs. And one aspect that Dr. Becky Kennedy really talked about in Good Inside is that it doesn't honor the self-reliance and capacity of others. I know when I think about how I parented my children, especially when they had negative feelings, if they were very sad about something or mad about something, it was hard for me just to let them sit in those feelings, and I wanted to remove them and take it all away. I really wasn't honoring their capacity and how they needed to learn to just manage those feelings on their own. It's one of the reasons I'm so inspired that We Are Resilient approach, because it can help us do better at these kinds of things. It can help us with that and honor people's ability and capacity to do it. Obviously, my 3-year-old needed some co-regulation. She needed me to hold her when she was screaming and feeling up, until she felt better if she's in the middle of a tantrum. But my 7-year-old was on her way to be able to understanding how to honor her own emotions. And I wish I had held her a little bit more in terms of allowing those negative emotions to happen. So in retrospect, just if I had honored that through noticing, oh, that's my protective pattern coming up, and maybe in this situation it's not helpful. That's how we notice and use or not use our protective patterns. Distrusting and hypervigilance are two other protective patterns. Distrusting is being curious. Do I doubt myself or others if I'm thinking about distrusting? My husband's often distrusting. Where's everything? Do we have it? I don't think I have this. And he'll stop the car when he has to go back and look, or he's distrusting that he hasn't done the job that he wanted to do, didn't go well, that he thought it should go. Hypervigilance. My sister is pretty hypervigilant. She's on high alert. Her friends and family call her Captain Safety. Now, like the other protective patterns, both of these can be helpful. Distrusting can make sure you have all your ducks in a row and you do things well. Hypervigilance can keep people safe, but distrusting can also prevent you from having good connections with people, and hypervigilance can make you feel exhausted as you're always on high alert. Defending, do I act like others are constantly judging and criticizing me and stepping back? Of course, that can be helpful because it keeps us safe, and makes sure people hear your point of view, but it can also reduce connection. And when we're attacking, am I quick to be on the offensive? Well, again, I'm standing up for myself, maybe standing up for others. Sometimes it's helpful to be attacking, but for other times, it's just hurting the relationship and not really helping. So just to recap, we all have protective patterns, and it's super helpful to think about which protective pattern you might use the most, and think about what your children might be using. Which of these do they use? And talk about it with them. Notice, oh, I am in distrusting mode, or maybe it's after the fact. I'm sorry that I didn't handle that well and I was in my attacking mode, my attacking protective pattern. Can we do a redo? Sometimes we just need to use those words, teach our children about that so they can understand what's going on with themselves, and they can, when they feel these things happening, they can look at that, think about that graph and say, okay, what's going to be helpful for me to do now? So tip number 1 is just noticing your protective patterns. Are they helping or hurting? And coaching your children to notice their own protective patterns. Obviously, this happens over time. It's much, but if you start it when they're 4 or 5, 6, then by the time they're teenagers, they already have this lexicon in their mind. They understand what to do, and it helps them as they go through life. Which resilience mindsets can help us with our resilience? So the resilient mindset of curiosity is really helpful. I talked about noticing our protective patterns. A lot of that is being curious about them. I just had this reaction when someone came in. What was that about? And thinking about that and being curious about it instead of already judging, well, I was just an idiot, or I was a fool, or why did I do that? I was clearly a bad mom. What was happening with me? What could I do? Sometimes it's just thinking, what don't I know about this? And that can happen with our children too, when they have some big reaction. Being curious about it instead of judgmental. Curiosity involves going into myself. How am I being in a situation? And also with others. Sometimes simple things like help me understand, or may I ask a clarifying question when one of your children is in a protective pattern or has just emerged, so that we understand what's going on a little bit better and we can talk with them. The resilient mindset of curiosity involves pausing, so pausing our judgments, thinking we know already, right? Noticing, this is what's happening now. That's a protective pattern over there, or I'm having a protective pattern, or somebody feels off, and then wondering what's really happening. So what can I be curious about? How might being curious help me? It can help my own feelings and emotions, thinking about that, my actions and behaviors. Why did I do that? And also it can help us see my child's feelings and actions in a different way. We can be curious about them instead of like, I wish he would stop being so blank today, or, oh, there so-and-so goes again, and there's such and such. Sometimes we're so quick to put judgment on, and curiosity can help us pause that judgment and investigate in a little deeper way. So when we're managing our stress curve, if we are curious, oh, there's that protective patterns we want to assess, and then understand we have a choice and choose a resilience goal. That's how we keep our cool and not in the red zone. It's helpful to remember our body's stress response is triggered more by the perceived stress than by an actual event. Curiosity can open us up to new possibilities and prepare us for what we really want to do, which is center ourselves, be that centered parent that we want to be, connect with our children and those around us, and collaborate together, work together to create the family life that we want. So when we're curious about our reactions and our child's reaction, then we're kind of emotion scientists. Sometimes it's helpful to think about and talk about that in that way with our kids. Can we be emotion scientists? Oh, you seem down today. What do you think's causing that? Or can you tell me a little bit more about that? How does that feel? And what would you like? Those kinds of questions. Now let's talk about what skills can help with resilience. So our centering skills give us personal resilience, and that's what people usually think of when they think about resilience. At Dovetail Learning, we talk about 5 different types of resilience. Our reactive resilience, which give us our protective skills we've already talked about. And this is our second type of resilience, personal resilience. And that we get that by using our centering skills. That's how we create the world we want. Centering is so powerful. It helps reduce our stress. It improves our well-being. We can parent more effectively. We can connect and collaborate with those in our lives. Right? When we're centered and grounded, we can be more of the people that we really want to be. Today I'm going to talk about two of our centering skills, noticing myself and breathing mindfully. Like all of this, we have much more material on dovetaillearning.org about all the things we talked about today. So feel free to go to our website and investigate at the end of this webinar. So noticing myself, this is just one of our centering skills. All of our centering skills are useful and they can be used at any time. They're a basket or a menu, and you choose the one that's most helpful for you at a particular time. So some days, I'm just, oh, what's going on? And if I think, oh, pause, what's the cause? That helps me notice myself. It's our tagline. If I'm curious, it's what am I noticing about myself? What am I sensing? What am I feeling? Oh, maybe I'm feeling a little down about that. I just had a wonderful trip with my family and children, and I'm often a little down when I return. So it's helpful for me to notice, oh, that's what I'm doing, and I can pause. What's the cause? That's the cause of me feeling unenergetic. I can notice the thoughts, the words that I say to myself. Maybe it's my emotions, my body's feelings, my reactions. Oh, I've just moved into a protective pattern. What's the cause for that? It's just how we call our state of being. It's important to remember what neuroscience Antonio Damasio told us. He reminds us that humans are feeling machines that think, not thinking machines that feel. I know sometimes in school and other learning opportunities, it's all about what we think, rationality is everything, but the reality is it's feelings. That's what motivates us, that's what energizes us, that's what gets us up in the morning. We have all sorts of emotional signals that are coming to us each day, and listening to them, pausing, what's the cause, noticing myself, those are how we can read our emotional signals. So when we're angry, to recognize, an important boundary or value has been violated. And then I can think about that and what I want to do that. My anger is a useful piece of information. If I'm joyful, it signals what I value and love. Spending time with my children this weekend, I was like, well, this is fantastic. If I'm frustrated, I might need to alter my expectations or change what I'm doing. If I feel guilty, maybe I violated my own standards and need to shift my behavior. And if I'm satisfied, I've met my own expectations or goals. So spending time checking in with ourselves helps us understand this. This is not intuitive. We don't usually born this way, knowing how to do all of this. And this is why we as parents are so important for our children, because we can give names to this idea and help them, guide them through this process of noticing myself. Now, noticing my emotions is, like I said, it's complicated. A lot of us just stay in these big emotions. Angry, I'm sad, I'm happy, I'm calm. The reality is when we're granular, when we get into the details, we have so much more information for ourselves and for others. There's a big difference between being concerned and being enraged. So if we're talking with a teenager that came in late, to be able to say, I'm concerned with you, is very different than saying, I'm enraged with you. And they're going to have a different reaction. Likewise, if we're talking to our child and they're kind of just flat, it's really different if they're alienated or despairing than if they're just bored. So learning how to distinguish those emotions and talking about this in ways with our kids is super helpful. The other thing that's important when we look at this chart is understanding the difference between narrow emotions, which are those on the left, and broad emotions, which are those on the right. Our narrow emotions, sometimes we think of as negative emotions because we don't want to have them, but the reality is they can give us really important information. So if we have a negative emotion or a narrow emotion, like fuming, then it's something we really need to do something about, we need to change, and we're really motivated, right? Narrow emotions help us narrow down and focus on something that we want to take care of or something that might need attention. Our broad emotions are generative, they're inclusive, they're creative, and so they just take us in a totally different direction. And so it's useful they also can give us helpful information. We're just feeling cozy. It's like, oh, okay, I want to stay in that mode for a while, right? So it's just good to think about narrow and broad emotions and the information that they give us. The other thing that's really important for us to learn and for our children to learn, just to acknowledge that riding the wave of emotions can be scary. But if we lean in and ride the wave, we learn from experience that the wave ends and we can walk again. That's where our co-regulation, our sitting with their children when they're feeling out of control, just being present with them can make a huge difference. They're able to have that experience that emotion's transitory, it's not forever, and they're going to move into something else. Sometimes it's helpful to teach children a body check-in. I'm going to pause, I'm going to breathe, I'm going to notice my body sensations, notice any emotions and images and thoughts, and adjust my body as needed. We can take a few minutes every day just to do a body check-in with our kids. 3 minutes, 2 minutes a day, and we get that connection with our kids, and they get an understanding of how to notice themselves. We have a series of micro practices that we suggest for all of our centering skills, and all of our skills are backed by science. We have lots of research, and if you want to pick up one of our books, either by downloading it for free or buying it, you'll learn a lot about the different micro practices and the different science that we have for all of our skills. So from noticing myself, a lot of it's just making space. Sometimes I do it when I'm in the shower, I do it when I'm swimming laps, I do it in the bathroom, waiting at stoplights. And then sometimes it's like I have an attitude or I'm feeling off. I've used a protective pattern, or maybe I give myself a compliment, and then it's good to notice myself. The next skill I want to talk about is breathing mindfully. Breathing mindfully involves breathe deeply and feel it completely. So when we breathe mindfully and we're curious about it, we think, where in my body do I feel my breath? What is the sensation I feel? Because I breathe in the area of my heart to calm myself, I trust my heart, and I rest my mind. There's a lot of science behind breathing mindfully. We have this vagus nerve that attaches our amygdala to our lungs expanding, and when we breathe, it just calms it down. It's amazing how it works. The science recap: breathing mindfully can de-escalate our emotional reaction, reduce our heart rate, strengthen our immune system, and connects our brains and hearts. So really, none of us have any excuse to not do at least 1 minute of breathing mindfully a day. No matter how busy we are, we can find that time. Let's take a moment right now.
We can get overwhelmed sometimes. So take a deep breath in and out. In and out. How do you feel as you breathe in? How do you feel as you breathe out? Notice as the breath enters your body and how your breath exits. Hopefully you feel a bit better now. You're doing great.
Maggie Lee, one of our team interns, took a few moments to do that breathing mindfully video for us, just to show how helpful it is. So at every stoplight or stop sign before we re-enter our homes, anytime you're feeling tense or in the bathroom or the shower, to help you fall asleep. This is also something easily taught to children, and we have a lot of ways to do that in our family activities book, also available on our website. Breathe deeply, feel it completely. I just suggest you choose 1 or 2 centering skills to practice on a regular basis, and that will help you become the grounded person that you want to be. My parenting well begins with noticing our protective patterns, being curious about what's happening with us and with our children, and practicing our centering skills. The We Are Resilient mindset is much more extensive than the tiny glimpse that I've shown you today. We have 3 different mindsets that guide us in using our patterns and skills. We have our protective patterns that we talked about today, that about how we react to the world, and we have our cultural patterns about how we view the world. We also have our centering skills, our connecting skills, and our collaborating skills that all give us resilience. As I said, we've just talked about curiosity, protective patterns, and centering skills. There's plenty more information on our website. If you want to teach the We Are Resilient approach to others, especially your children, the first important thing is practice it yourself so you become better, and micro habits are key. And then the way you live it is how your children are going to learn it from you. And then using curiosity, compassionate questions, and encouragement are how our children learn from us. 2 tiny things that we say sometimes that can help are, I'm not my most resilient self at the moment. And that can help people understand what mood you're in today, and what pattern can I honor, or resilience skill can I choose right now when we are feeling not our most resilient self. As I said, we have this family activities book on our website. We have a book, Practical Skills for More Resilient Family, and we have lots more training options. Subscribe to our newsletter to find out more about them. Visit dovetaillearning.org. And you can get much more information on our website, or feel free to email me directly at meri@dovetaillearning.org. I will send the recording out after today's webinar, so all of you will have an opportunity to review it and share it with others that you care about. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me, and have a wonderful day.